Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the newest Quentin Tarantino film, which I would hope you would know, and I also hope you know that I've been doing a full Quentin Tarantino filmography run through, not only the films he directed, but also films that he wrote. That's been a lot of fun going through those and revisiting them and talking about them with you guys. But I was, of course, like most of you, really looking forward to this movie. I am a huge DiCaprio fan and a Brad Pitt fan, so to get to see them in a movie starring together side by side was a real treat. Just at the promise of it, not even just actually going and seeing the movie, just hearing that that was going to happen and that it was going to be written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, it was one of those, those serendipitous moments where you're just like, oh yes, thank you. I need a film like that in my life. So I went out and I got to see that this morning, which I did not get to see it last night because my family was sick and I had to take care of them, and that comes first. Now, this is set in 1969 Hollywood, and it follows the events of a failing actor by the name of Rick Dalton, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and his stuntman turned assistant, personal assistant, Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt. Now, this is set in 1969 Hollywood, as I said, so it kind of weaves itself in and out of the Sharon Tate, Charles Manson, Spawn Ranch, Manson family story. But if you've seen Inglourious Basterds or you're familiar with Quentin Tarantino, you know that the guy doesn't really care much to stick to factual history. So don't expect this to be factually correct when it comes to the events that unfold in the movie. Let's just say that. No one is surprised by that. So, but yeah, so I went into this very excited, of course, and especially after having run through all of his films like I had, I was on a Quentin Tarantino high, and man, I was really looking forward to the hell out of this. So now, having watched them all back to back like I have, I can kind of tell you where I would put this in his filmography as it sits right now. And this is off of my first viewing, but as far as my first viewing goes, I would put this somewhere in the middle, probably, of his filmography. Nowhere near the bottom, but not at the top. This is not my favorite, but that's not a knock on the film. You're talking about a director that has some of the greatest movies ever made in his filmography, with Pulp Fiction, Django Unchained, Inglourious Basterds. I mean, this guy has made unbelievably fantastic films, and of course Kill Bill 1 and 2, which I consider to be one movie. So that's not a knock. And I like every one of the movies I just mentioned more than this. But this film, much like a lot of Quentin Tarantino's, not all of his movies, because there are a few of his movies that actually do have a straightforward plot, like a Jackie Brown. But this one, as he called it, is a buddy hangout movie, and I feel that's an apt description. It kind of reminds me of something like a Dazed and Confused. Now, of course, we're talking about two completely different kinds of movies as far as like the stories and the characters, but just kind of that loose hanging around people and their day-to-day life, and the challenges that they're kind of overcoming internally, and what the next step of their life is going to be. And so Rick Dalton, played by Leo, he is this failing Hollywood once upon a time star, but now a has-been. And Cliff Booth has become his personal assistant, best friend, who claims he's his stunt double, but doesn't really do a lot of work for him much anymore outside of being his personal assistant. And it's just kind of really an exploration of Leo's character in this and how he is dealing with not really being the center of attention anymore. He's not really getting the big roles. He's doing a lot of stuff that he would rather not be doing. He's embarrassed. He's angry. He's a full-blown raging alcoholic. He feels like his whole life is falling apart. Now, things that were surprising to me about this movie is the lack of time that the other actors in this movie get. You got some pretty big names here. You got like Al Pacino and Kurt Russell, and then you've also got like Timothy Olyphant, and you've got Luke Perry, and I think his last movie ever made. And honestly, like their screen time is very, very little. I mean, very little. In fact, you could cut pretty much every one of the roles out of the movie and it wouldn't really affect the movie. Now, granted, the movie doesn't have a straightforward plot anyway, so you could cut almost anything and it wouldn't really matter because there isn't a true end game to the plot, because there really isn't a plot. Not to say the end of the movie isn't fucking amazing. It is. And I think that's what you're going to hear from everybody. The ending is what you're waiting for, and holy shit does it deliver. But getting there, you don't really, there's key moments where you do need those scenes. But a lot of the other actors, like as I had mentioned, all these other names, and man, there's cameos from people, and there's one in particular that I will be very curious on how many people even noticed him in the movie. And he's an actor who Quentin uses in every frickin' movie he's ever done, whether he does narration or he's in the movie itself. So I think you know who I'm talking about. But it is like a literal blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. And I would be very curious to know who saw him in this movie. Because I was like, that's him right there. Like I was just kind of like, there he was. And that was that. And I was like, okay, interesting. So, I don't want to use the word disappointed, but just more surprised that, Al Pacino's character didn't have more to do. That he didn't have more impact. That I don't honestly remember him doing anything that was all that memorable. His scenes I could have done without, and it wouldn't have really made any difference to the movie for me. Same thing with Timothy Olyphant, really. I mean, there's a couple little things here and there. It's okay. I think that Brad Pitt is the star of the show. Now, Leo's performance is excellent. Everyone expects that. I mean, there are some Leo haters out there, but, there's a hater for everybody. So, that's nor here nor there. But for the most part, rational people, smart people, just kidding, love Leo because he's a fantastic actor. So when I say Leo's performance in this is amazing, duh, right? But Brad Pitt's character and his scenes are just more iconic and they're more fun. This movie is rather slow. I heard a lot of people saying like, oh my God, it's so funny. It's such a blast. Like, it's not some laugh out loud, freaking joke a minute kind of movie by any means. It's very slow. It's more drama and then thriller stuff and comedies in there. There's a good amount of comedy, but we're talking about 2 hour and 45 minute runtime here. And it feels it. It's a very long movie and you can feel the 2 hours and 45 minutes. This isn't like Pulp Fiction, which I think is like 220, where every minute something's going on and there's some other freaking hilarious quote going down or something. It's not like that at all. It's much slower paced. So if you're somebody who found Inglourious Bastards to be boring, then this might be on the more boring side for you. I had a few walkouts in this movie. I watched maybe 5-6 people get up and leave about halfway in. They were like, this is boring, and left. And a couple of them were younger. It wasn't like, because I did see this with a bunch of older people, which was interesting because I went to the very earliest showing, which the tickets were only $4.75. I honestly don't have to pay for tickets right now. Well, I pay for them technically, but I have A-List from AMC, which is amazing. Thanks to Tony Crespo for that, for letting me know about that. But yeah, there was a bunch of really old people in there for, the early bird special. And it was interesting sitting around a bunch of people who were actually there in 1969, who could look at those sequences, who a lot of them probably did see Sunset Boulevard and all the other Hollywood Boulevard and all the different places that they drive down in 1969. And I also want to point out that there is no CGI used in this movie. They actually turned downtown Hollywood back into 1969 Hollywood, which is incredible, seeing as how a good amount of the movie is not set on any of the streets. It's not like there's long scenes that are like, walking down and you're seeing all these elaborate sets that they built. It's just like a car driving past really fast. I also will say this. I'm not a trailer guy. I've said this many times, but I did watch the trailer for this, and I'm very upset with myself because the trailer really does give away a lot. And I was bummed. A lot of the good jokes are in there, and I was really bummed because I was like, oh, here we go with that. Here we go with that. Blah, blah, blah. So that did bum me out. I think that it is a very, very good movie. And I think it's something that once I sit on for longer and once I see it again, which I will not be seeing in theaters again, but once I see it again, when it comes out on Blu-ray, maybe in a year or two, I will enjoy it even more. But for now, I really liked it. I did not love it because I did find lulls in it. I did find scenes to kind of be pointless, and I didn't care for the characters all that much in certain sequences. Certain actors that I was really looking forward to seeing and being like, that was it? That was the only thing I got from them? We've got Dakota Fanning in here. We got name after name. There's a lot of people, and they play like 2-minute roles. I will say that the girl who plays the character Pussycat, man, she was sexy. And she plays a much bigger role than Al Pacino or Kurt Russell or any of these other big names. There's also a great sequence between Leonardo DiCaprio and this little girl. I'm sure if you saw the trailers, you know what I'm talking about, but I thought that whole sequence was excellent and was really kind of speaking to what was going on in his mind. But it's a journey, it's an adventure, and you just kind of go along with them. You don't know exactly where you're going, and you know that the Sharon Tate, Charles Manson stuff is on the horizon because there's kind of reminders of it here and there, and there are tense moments. There are scenes that feel like horror for a moment, but he goes full Quentin Tarantino at the end of this movie, and there was definitely some shock in the audience and a lot of people who were enjoying it, and some people who, an old lady who was next to me who got up and left, and that's what you got to do. You got to elicit a response from people. That's what Tarantino does. So absolutely a recommendation, of course. Got to go see a Tarantino movie. It's not his best in my opinion, but not a slug or slumper, whatever the hell. I think it's absolutely worth your time. So there you go, guys. I hope you go out and check it out. Let me know what you think. I'll be curious, of course, as always, to know what everyone thinks about this one. I'll see you in the comments. Adios.